Greetings, 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 everyone, and welcome to Create Yourself Imagery, Intimacy, Innovation, a place where people from all walks of life in various backgrounds come to share their transformative personal and professional stories of restoration, confidence, clarity, and empowerment. I'm Joyce Kiles, your global speaker and life and leadership thriving coach. And if you're ready to transition, transform, and thrive, this is the podcast for you. My guest today, I am super excited to have. I have been following this young lady for years now. I think we may have met, I'm going to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, through our mutual friend and connective I think it was, yeah, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it was with Rhonda Treadwell, who is the executive director of Dress for Success Memphis. And so I want to say that I may have met this young lady maybe 5 or 6 years ago due to that connection. But when I tell you she is a powerhouse, I mean, wise beyond her years. I love her dearly as a person who is professional and personable and just all the things. She is truly just as beautiful on the inside as she is the outside. So let me tell you a little bit about her. I'm just going to share a bit about her bio, and then we're just going to jump right in and let me introduce her. So, Dr. Shmeka Gibson is an author, international speaker, business owner, and college professor. She has over 20 years of experience in nonprofit management and leadership. Dr. Gibson is a native Memphian and a mother of two daughters. Dr. Gibson resides in Austin, Texas, where she serves as the executive director of Changing the Mindset. CTMS offers workshops, coaching, and therapy to youth and working professionals who need support in addressing mental health, personal and workplace bullying, and leadership development. Dr. Gibson is also known for her work with Dress for Success Memphis, assisting over 65 businesses with organizational infrastructure development, programming, and scaling their business. Dr. Gibson's philanthropic work, serving as a board director and volunteer for many U.S. and international organizations, and grant writing skills have allowed her to assist more than 25 organizations in securing over $84 million. Let me say that again, in securing over $84 million in funding to sustain their organization. So without further ado, let me present to some and introduce to others none other than my friend, my colleague, Dr. Shmeka Gibson. Dr. Gibson, welcome to the show.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Joyce. You know what? That's so interesting. I always tell people that, you don't realize how busy you are and how much you have going on until you hear someone read your bio. And as I was listening to you read the bio, I was like, oh my goodness, that girl is busy. There's a lot going on. And it's like when do you have time to do all of these things, right?
Right, right. And yet you somehow find the time to do it and do it all and do it with grace and with style and poise. And I'm not just saying that because we're on this podcast together. Like, I really do admire you and the way that you carry yourself holistically in the way that you do all these amazing things, but you just seem to just do it all effortlessly. So that is to be applauded.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate that. I really try to be intentional in the work that I do, and then I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm one of those type of people that don't like to do things twice. So I really try to be cognizant about what I put out, what I do, because I don't have a lot of time. So I have to make sure that every second of the day that I am giving to someone else that is valuable and that I am making the impact that I'm trying to accomplish, but also that I'm producing some really good outcomes as well.
Yep. Well, you definitely do that, and your resume definitely speaks to that. It speaks for itself. So, yes, ma'am, you have done all the things.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so with that, then let's talk a little bit about, your journey, your create yourself journey. So, what made you take this path that you've taken with changing the mindset and, just all the things that you are involved in, being a professor, all the things. So, if you would just take our listeners on a create yourself journey and what made you decide that these paths were the right paths for you to take?
Oh, perfect. So, over the years, I have learned to refine my story so it's not 45 days long. I have learned how to condense it in a way to where, I'm able to touch on everything, but also kind of give you some insight on my thought process. And because everything that I do is centered around mindset and mindset shifting and changing the way you think to alter your behaviors. And I can honestly say that I always knew that I wanted to be a consultant. I always knew that I wanted to go. Oh my goodness, my dog. Sorry, Joy.
Oh no, you are just fine. And that is what Create Yourself is all about. Again, imagery, intimacy, innovation. So, for us, it's how do we weave in all of the different pieces of ourselves. And, your dog is a part of you. And
And you know what? It's so funny. Dogs are like children, right? Like
of
they're
course.
quiet and they don't bother you or do anything until you start working. But my apologies again.
Oh, you are just fine.
So back to the story. I knew that I wanted to be a consultant. I always knew that I wanted to go into the field of helping people and businesses. But what that looked like, I really didn't know. I didn't really have a clear understanding of what it was I wanted to do or how I would do it or what type of education that I needed. So I always tell people that my journey started when I was in college. Just, deciding on a career path that I wanted to take. I wanted to go into the field of psychology. But at that time, I didn't know that psychology was such a broad field and that I needed to identify a specific discipline in order for me to be able to accomplish the career goal that I was interested in pursuing. So I attended Christian Brothers University in Memphis, Tennessee, and in that experience alone, I met some really great professors. And one of my professors recently just retired, and from that experience, I learned how to understand the field of psychology, understand the different schools of psychology and the different career fields in psychology. And then that's when I started to understand more about where my first trip was going to be, which was counseling. So once I received my bachelor's, I immediately enrolled into a master's program and received my master's in psychology and counseling. And during that experience, I worked at a youth detention center. And that's where I learned about cognitive behavior therapy, trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy, ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. Those are things that was exposed to me early on in my career that I did not know would be very prevalent in today's time. And we're talking roughly almost 20 years ago. So, working with family and children around trauma and cognition and behavior and how those two things interplay with each other, I didn't really understand it. I did not know that what I was learning then would be very important today. So fast forward, I went through, working in the field of counseling and psychology and, counseling families and children. And um, I eventually ended up going into the field of teaching. So I love teaching, but I never wanted to be a primary or secondary teacher. So I tried my hand at adjunct teaching at a community college and I loved it. I mean, when I say that that is like one of the things that I enjoy the most, and from teaching was when I realized I wanted to be a full-time college professor and I would like to retire. So my retirement plan at the age of 25 was to become a college professor and retire. So moving along from that journey, I'm teaching, I'm counseling, life is good. I'm married, I have kids, life is life. And, I have no worries. At the time, my husband was a really good man. He took care of me and the kids and we didn't want for anything. So, I mean, I felt like I had the perfect life and things were going really good. But life shifted, life shifted. Um, as I continued to progress through my growth and development and what I wanted, things changed for me. I started to look at relationships differently. That's the first time in my life where I realized that maybe I was too young to have kids. Maybe I was too young to be married. You know, um, maybe I should focus more on myself. I've spent all of my young 20s, just caring for everyone else, that I kind of neglected who Shmeka was. So I enrolled in a PhD program. That didn't make much sense, Like, normally when a person is experiencing, life altering conversations, they don't go and enroll into $100,000, degree program. But I thought that that's what I needed. One thing I can say, Joyce, is that I didn't have enough people in my life that were saying, well, Shmeka, try this out first, or Shmeka, go here first, or Shmeka, do this first. So I didn't have a lot of guidance. So I'm just going with what I think makes sense. I'm a lifelong learner. And so I thought that going to school to get more education was the remedy to what I was feeling, my emotions. And it was like, okay, the more education you have, the better you are, right? The smarter you are, the more attractive you
Yes.
are.
Wow.
So I had that stigma attached to me, and that's what I did. I just kept going to school and racking up student loan debt. So I enrolled into this PhD program, and it was a counseling program because I thought that that's what I wanted to do, was be a counselor, because I was already counseling, and I felt that being a mother and a wife, that was my calling. But I learned really quickly that counseling was not for me. Um, I got burnt out really quick, like most therapists and counselors do. It wasn't enjoyable anymore. I noticed that I was taking home some of those conversations and some of those experiences home with me. It affected my marriage. It affected my children. And so I did not know what to do, but I kept going. I made it all the way to the dissertation phase, before I applied for another job and got hired with another organization that was doing something totally different. And this is where I get into the story about the change in the mindset, where a change in the mindset was birthed. Um, because I was working for an organization that I like to tell people that I was raised in leadership. And through that experience, I learned so much about myself. I learned, how to properly communicate with people. I learned how to establish relationships. I learned the value of human capital. I learned the value of servant leadership. But I also dealt with workplace bullying. I didn't know that that's what that was, but I later learned, many years later, that what I've experienced in the workplace was my exposure to a toxic work environment, and also a bullying in the workplace. So, what I experienced at that company prompted me to have a conversation with my advisor and try something different. Counseling wasn't it. So I was like, what else can I do? So we had a conversation about all the different careers in psychology. And she actually sent me a book that I still have today that I allow my students to use when they're kind of stuck in what direction they want to go in. And it's called Careers in Psychology. So I took some time to review that book, and I stumbled up on industrial organizational psychology. And I was like, man, this sounds interesting. I immediately went to how much you make, because I'm like, if I'm going to change my degree, I need to make sure that it's going to be fiscally, make sense. And so
Wow.
I found out that IO psychologists, the percentage of individuals with that degree is roughly less than 10%, and even lower for African American. And also, it's the highest paid degree. And IO psychologists have a lot of influence in workplace behaviors and how the individual or how the employee respond to the working environment. And so that was very interesting to me, very attractive to me. And, I was a data person. So, components of that degree focus on data. And then also, I learned about consulting and coaching. So, consulting and coaching um, in psychology falls under the discipline of IO. So I said, man, this is it. This is where I need to be. And I often leave the mention of God out of the conversation, but he was in the midst of all of it, right? I felt like a lot of things that I
Right.
could not do was was impossible without consulting with God. So yeah, there was a lot of praying, there was a lot of journaling, there was a lot of late nights of crying, early mornings of crying, just trying to figure out what it is I should be doing, what direction I should be going. So I changed my entire degree. I started over, literally started over.
Wow.
I felt so strong about this degree, and this we talking 2012. Like I feel so strong about this degree that I said, you know what, flip it. I'm going for it. I'm going for it. I was already sitting on $150,000 in student loan debt, and I was like, I mean, what's 100 more? I don't have to pay for it. So many life lessons. I was like, I don't have to pay for this. I can pay for it later. Oh my goodness. So many irresponsible decision making. And it's funny because as I reflect on my marriage, because me and my ex-husband isn't married anymore, as I reflect back on our relationship, there was so many things that he tried to advise me not to do. But in that moment, I was so headstrong on what Shmeka wanted to do that
Mhm.
I was disobedient to my husband, my ex-husband. And there was things that he was telling me to protect me and not hurt me, but in that moment, because I was immature in my way of thinking, I wasn't willing to trust him. And then also, I mean, I can be honest about this, and me and him have had the conversations. Is that I didn't trust him,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
a lot of that was, well, you don't have a college degree, how you know
Mm.
you're not doing what I'm doing, so how so it was that type of thinking, where it was like, because you wasn't on my level, so I thought, that stunted my growth. Although I felt that God was working in my life in mysterious ways and awesome ways, but also I was getting in the way of what could have possibly happened during that period of my life, because I was not respectful to the man that God put in my life to help coach and steer me in a positive direction, which is
Mm.
something that I learned. That was experience that I learned. And it took me quite a bit of time to date again and feel comfortable enough to trust a man to lead me, because there was trauma that I dealt with. There are so many different types of trauma that a person experiences, and they only think about trauma in the form of a car accident, or, PTSD from the military,
Right.
or, domestic
Right.
violence. So they only look at trauma from the aspect of it just being negative. But I've experienced trauma in a way that it rechanged and restructured the way that I think and I thought about things. Dating was difficult for me because I was afraid of failing again. That's a form of trauma.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely.
And that is part of cognition. That's part of the
Mhm.
way you think that controls your behavior, because the way you think controls the way you respond, the way you perceive things, the way you behave with people. And I struggled in that area of my life because I had to relearn how to be a better person, to be a better listener, to be more patient and kind, and to understand what a man's role was in his woman's life. So
Wow.
we got a divorce. We got a divorce.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Mhm.
and this was the first time in my life, because I married young. I married young. I had kids young. This is the first time in my life that I'm a young single woman trying to figure things out. I'm in a PhD program. I have these two kids, and I'm trying to figure life out. And then when I say life beat my tail, oh my god! Like when I say life drug me, what the kids say, they turned me every way but loose.
But loose, yes, yes. Shoot, the kids and some of us adults too.
Yeah, I mean, when I say took me through the ringer, Joyce, like
Yeah.
it was some tough times, some very tough times. Um, and I actually started dating this one guy roughly around 2016, 2017, after my divorce was final. And he was quite interesting, very interesting guy. And the things that I went through with him was a lot of the foundational work for changing the mindset.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
in
All right.
so in 2018, um, I started working on my first book, and my first book was mainly about the way people, the poverty mindset, the way people think based off of the current situation that they're in. And again, keep in mind, I still didn't understand what any of this meant. I'm just thinking about the field of work I'm in, the people that I'm interacting with day to day, and the people that are in my life. So I'm writing this book. I was so strong about this book. I had created the cover and did everything that needed to be done. And I started writing about my personal experiences, in my relationship, in my career, my health and wellness, leadership. And that's how I was able to develop the change in the mindset models. So I took all of the different components of my life and I turned each one of them into a model that could be used to help someone else change the way they think. So
Wow.
we had a health and wellness, we had a mental health and trauma, we had financial literacy and sustainability, we had leadership, empowerment. Um, I can't remember the other one, but those were pretty much the models that I created.
Mm-hmm.
And the book changed several times. So when I finally finished the book, I gave a copy of it to the guy that I was dating at the time, and I didn't think he was going to read it. I didn't think he was going to read it, but he read it, and he
Mm.
was he
Okay.
was he was livid. he
Oh,
was
wow.
he was
Oh,
upset.
wow.
He was like, "Did you
Okay.
did you write about me in this book?"
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, I did. I did. I did. And I ain't change it. I'm like, no, this is true. Like, I'm not changing this. So we broke up.
Oh my, yes, yes. I am learning so much.
So we broke
Yes.
up. Went
Okay.
our separate ways, and I said, well, what am I going to do with this? I started SG Consulting and Data, which was pretty much workforce development, helping people with their do the resume writing, career development stuff, and that was going pretty good. And I was still holding on to changing the mindset because I didn't know what that was, what I was supposed to do with this. Um, and I kept doing what I was doing with the career development. That was going well. I had contracts, I was speaking and connecting with people. October the 15th, 2018 was when I decided to leave corporate America, actually leave nonprofit world and start working for myself. That's a whole nother story for another day. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to step out. And this was at the organization where I was dealing with the mental health, workplace mental health stuff. So at this point, I say, you know what, enough is enough. Let me step out and let me figure this out. So things are going great. 2018 to maybe 2019, end of 2019, I end up getting a job teaching at Christian Brothers. So I'm teaching at the community college and I'm teaching at Christian Brothers. And, I'm working my contracts. Life is great. Life is good. And then I got my first big contract. It was around January 2020. Got my first big contract. It was a $60,000 contract working with an organization on preparing their clients for workforce development and training. So, man, I was like, man, I made it. I say, I
Okay.
made it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Then COVID happened.
Mm, yes, don't I know?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened and threw a monkey wrench in my plans. Then I had to leave my apartment, move in with my parents until, things died down. I left my apartment in April of 2020, moved in with my parents, stayed with them for the summer, and I moved out and got my own place July of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Still didn't know what to do with changing the mindset. I mean, changing the mindset was what it was, workforce development, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, this can't be it, right? Like there has to be something else. So I'm sitting at the house, Miss Joyce. This is roughly July 2020. And I get multiple phone calls, like, hey, I didn't know your daughter was a victim of bullying. I didn't know your daughter was a victim of bullying.
Mm.
We just saw this video of her talking about her bullying experience. And I'm like, what? Like, Jayla they went to no bullying? Like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
So someone sent me the video, and she actually did a bullying initiative with the church, and
Mm.
And she told her story about bullying. And when I say this was, we talking in July 2020, that was my first time watching it. And we are in almost July 2025, and I have yet to be able to watch the video again.
Understood.
So
Understood.
I only watched it that one time. I had a conversation with my daughter, um, and I said, "Hey, let's talk." So we talked about her experiences and what she went through when she was in middle school and how she was teased and the things that she experienced. And I said, "Well, you know what do you want to do with this?" Because I was thinking about closing, changing the mindset, Miss Joyce, because I'm like, we're not doing anything with it. I'm doing good with the consulting business. Business
Mm-hmm,
picked back
mm-hmm.
up, during the, PPP loans and EIDL loans. I was able to help organizations. We launched the business mentorship program with Dress for Success. So I'm like, I'm good. I don't have to deal with this
Right,
nonprofit.
right. Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, Mom, there wasn't a lot of organizations that I could call, or I didn't know where to go to get help. She said, so can we turn changing the mindset into a bullying nonprofit? And I
Oh,
said,
I love that.
interesting. And that's what we did. So in 2020,
Yeah.
we pivoted. We went from entrepreneurial and workforce development to a mental health organization working with youth that have experienced technology bullying, which was cyberbullying, which was really big at that time. And then any other type of bullying, we offer mentorship, resources and support to parents and kiddos that have experienced bullying. I moved here to Austin, Texas, December of 2022, and we started working on our second leg of changing the mindset. We started a second location, and that's when we incorporated the workplace mental health piece. So currently, as of today, Changing the Mindset is a nonprofit organization here in Texas that provides resources and support to individuals that have experienced bullying and mental health in their personal and professional life. We offer two program structures, one for our youth, and the models are our Bullying Can't Stop Me program and our Youth Ambassador program, where we work with kiddos about understanding the 6 different types of bullying, how to identify them, how to advocate for themselves and others, and how to be leaders in their community around mental health and bullying. And on the adult side, we do workplace mental health, where we work with organizations on creating toxic free and safe working environments for their employees and their leaders. And we provide individual counseling, mental health coaching, and resources for the working professional and entrepreneurials so they can learn how to have a truly healthy work life balance. And that's how I ended up where I'm at.
Wow. So many things that I want to say. Uh, and we don't have the time for it, for all of it, because you really stirred up so many different emotions for me, and it just allows me to appreciate you and your work and your story so much more now. Just I really appreciate the candidness in which you have shared, taking some accountability for some things and not allowing what you had to just stay sitting on a shelf. That's I love that you really exemplify what it create yourself was created for. You're one of the very reasons, your story is one of the very reasons that I wanted to do this podcast and have this podcast and be able to share it with the world, because I
Oh,
really wanted people to understand. No, I sincerely mean it. Listening to you, when we talked about you coming on to the show, I knew that there were certain things that you represented when it comes to imagery, intimacy, and innovation. But I had no idea until this interview just how deeply you do really represent all three of those and what it means to just go forward. And even though you spoke about, it costing more now, yeah, what's another $100,000,
yeah, yeah,
it's, but you knew that this was a space that I did not need to stay in because there's more for me. And I don't always implement, I allow our guests to talk about however they believe, whomever they believe in terms of the spiritual realm. Since you mentioned God, then I'm going to interject that here to say, if you are a person of faith and you believe in God and you believe in his power, then what Dr. Shmeka is sharing about crying, crying to him, crying unto
Mhm.
him and petitioning him to help bring some clarity and perspective to what it is that you are truly called to do. And so there's this thing where there are things that we want to do, and then there are things that God wants us to do. And sometimes they're in alignment, but most of the time they're not. So I was sharing with someone earlier that my husband and I, when we pray, part of our prayer is to ask God to bless us with the desires of our hearts in accordance to your will, your way, your plan, your purpose for our individual and collective lives. So that if we're going in the path that he directs, then we know that we're going down the right direction. It becomes, and you just shared it here again, things started to open up for you when you came to the realization of understanding, I need to create a different narrative. I need to create a new path. I need to create a new journey. And you found it. And the joy, seeing, because I know you personally, I know the personal joy that changing the mindset brings you, the revelations that came about as it relates to your daughter. I have her book, so I hope, would desire that you talk about that. Look, I didn't put you on the spot now, so I definitely want you to mention it. So if you hadn't planned it, they definitely do mention it because I do have her book. I actually have yours as well. Um, but just so many great gems, great nuggets that you shared about what it means to really create a different narrative that shifts our way of thinking. And you knew at a very young age that you wanted to be a consultant, and yet you deviated from it to some degree with going into counseling. Because a lot of times when we're younger, we think about this is what we think would make us the most money, and this is what's going to give us the biggest opportunity to be seen and to do all the things. When actually, if we just stay true to this is what I really want to do, and we seek the right counsel. And that was the other thing that you mentioned too, with when you were talking about, what it means to be innovative and what it means to really start taking a deeper dive into what does Shmeka really want. Then you mentioned about not necessarily having people around you that provided certain guidance. And then for the person that did, you didn't trust it. So just creating a different mindset around all of that and learning how to trust you again, how to trust self again. I mean, it is just, you have provided so many great gems. So really, truly appreciate, and I'm sure that the listeners do too, your candidness about it all and how it has all come together. That even though you may have been making money and making the moves and happy and all things were good, you listened to your daughter and she gave you something that was personally hurtful for her, but it gave you all something that you could build on and bond with together and create this beautiful thing. It is, the nonprofit is outstanding, and I really do hope people will connect with it. So I'm just so appreciative of all that you have shared.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, like I said, I'm learning to be I'm in a season of transparency. I'm now a 40-year-old woman, and I've learned to embrace and accept that now. For roughly about 6 months before my birthday in April, it was tough. I'm like, man, we're losing loved ones, I'm losing classmates, and as I reflect back, I'm like, man, when I think about, losing family members, it's like, yeah, 20 years ago, they were 40, or they were 50. So life is starting to hit me a little bit differently. And as a college professor, we do a lot of talking about developmental stages, the periods of your life where it's time for you to start reevaluating what you have accomplished and what you have given to to the world. And I'm in that phase of life now. I'm in that developmental phase. According to Eric Erickson, who is who's in the psychoanalytic field of psychology, and he talks about the stage of development where once you reach 40, you're starting to think about what is next as far as leaving a legacy. And for a while, I struggled with what is the legacy? What is it that I want to leave behind? And I always tell people that I want to be remembered for how I made you feel and not necessarily what I've done. That's good. It's good to
Yes.
know too. It's good for people to say, oh, well, Shmeka done all these great things. That's wonderful. But I always want somebody to remember those feelings that I gave them. You know, Shamika always made me feel like I was important. She always made me feel like, you know, time was essential with her. You know, no one understands why when my staff come into my office or try to have a conversation with me, I tell them to stop, don't leave until I do what they've asked me to do, because that's important. I want you to feel validated. And I'm not always perfect, you know, but I will say that I really try to be intentional in how I treat people, because the way people feel about you, the way people think about you is how they will treat you. And if people like you, they treat you a lot nicer than they do when they don't like you. And I
Amen.
what I've learned, and people always say, oh, you can call people and they will stop what they're doing and answer your call, or they'll do whatever you ask them to do. I said, but if you ask them how I make them feel, they will tell you that Dr. Gibson is always there when I need her. Dr. Gibson is reliable. I called Dr. Gibson at 11 o'clock. I know she sleep at 10:30, but she answered the phone and she stayed on the phone with me and helped me through whatever I was dealing with. Dr. Gibson never makes us feel like we're bothering her. And that's the legacy that I want to leave behind.
Well, I can honestly, truthfully say that if that is the legacy that you are striving to leave behind, then you are doing an excellent job, because I know that I am one of those people that you described, that I know that I can call you and we can talk, and we could have not talked for 3 months,
Mhm.
or we can have talked every day, and it's going to always be the same with you. So I know that to be true of you. So again, if that is the legacy that you are striving for, then ma'am, you are definitely succeeding.
Thank
Um,
you.
I mean every word. I want to, before we wrap up, a couple of things I do want to make sure that I touch on, because you have talked a lot about mindset and mindset shifts, and that is definitely my space. I love talking about all things wellness. So, in that vein, what tools, tips, resources, anything that you would suggest to our listeners as they, may be going through a period of frustration, depression, anger, workplace bullying, youth bullying. They may have a, son, daughter, grandchild, someone that may be experiencing that. Um, how can they get in touch with you, and what things can you share in this space right now that they can hold on to as they are preparing themselves to connect with you?
I would say, um, first you have to acknowledge that it's there. Individually, you know, we often know that when something isn't right, you know, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, but sometimes we ignore it because we think that it's going to go away, but it intensifies. The more that you have this feeling that something isn't right, and the longer you allow it to fester, the worse it becomes. And then it leads to other issues and other vices that you may become interested in. I would say don't ignore those feelings, you know. And when someone comes to you, for example, like when me and my daughter had our conversation about bullying, and I asked her, you know, why didn't you tell me, or why didn't you have this conversation with me? And you know, I was also dealing with my own mental health. I was going through a divorce. You know, I was dealing with workplace bullying. I was trying to build a business. I was in a toxic relationship. I had my own stuff going on. And the most beautiful thing about me and my daughter's relationship is that she knew that I was dealing with my own, and she dealt with her own, and she healed herself. Does it make me feel good as a parent? Absolutely not. I'm gonna be honest. It doesn't. It doesn't make me feel good to know that my daughter could not come to me in a season of my life where I was too wrapped up in my own issues. And I will say this, if you are a parent, it's okay to apologize to your child. I had to do a lot of apologizing and a lot of reassuring that you done nothing wrong and I will always be there for you. And I wish that I could have done things differently. The relationship that I have with my daughters are so important to me because I am one of those parents that believe in accountability. I believe in respect. And I believe in giving my children the autonomy and space to feel what they feel. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So I would say that. I would say recognize it and don't let it fester. And then get help. The, I think one of the things that we struggle the most with in the African American community is that we still stigmatize mental health support, men
Yes,
and
we do.
women. You know,
Mhm.
um, it's okay to talk to someone about the challenges that you're dealing with your mental health. If you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, attend a workshop just to learn more about what mental health is and how is beneficial for your quality of life. Um, if you feel comfortable, if you don't want to talk to someone, then workshops are good. Reading resources about mental health, doing watch some YouTube videos about mental health. I mean, get informed, educate yourself on what mental health is, mental wellness, and do a better job at putting yourself first and being proactive in your health and wellness. And then lastly, if there's anyone that is interested in connecting with us for your bullying and mental health needs, and we also work with the bullies too. We don't just limit our services to those that
Okay.
are victims, but we also work with the adult bully and the youth bully. Because what we've learned is that if we do not address those behaviors early on, if we don't do that early intervention work, then those youth bullies become our adult bullies in the working environment. So we really
Absolutely.
try to be proactive and we work with young people that are bullies because they also have feelings and emotions and trauma and things that they're dealing with that needs to be addressed. You can contact us at www.changingthemindset.org. Um, and my name is Shmeka Gibson, and I am located on LinkedIn. You can connect with me via LinkedIn. And then we do have a Change in the Mindset 2019 on LinkedIn and Instagram, and Change in the Mindset Inc. on Facebook.
Thank you very much for all of that. I do want to acknowledge, as I do each week when I host a podcast, I always share that the information is also given in written form. So it's always going to be under the bio. Everything's going to be under the flyer on the website for the podcast. So if you happen to be listening and not available at the time to go back and write everything down, it's going to be right there in front of you so that you can come back to it and write the information and connect. I'm going to highly, highly, highly recommend that you connect with Dr. Gibson in her program to learn more about what she's doing and just really embrace the evolution of her so that you can be guided to move forward in a positive direction and change your mindset about things too. This has been extremely informative. My last question to you is if you have any events that are coming up or anything that you would like to share as we wrap up our time together.
Absolutely. So this month is Male Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are hosting our Male Mental Health panel discussion on June 30th. We will have some amazing men that will grace us virtually to talk about men's mental health and how to be a supporter and an ally for supporting our men. And then we also provide workplace mental health group sessions virtually twice a month on Wednesdays. We call them our Workplace Mental Health Wednesdays. And this is an opportunity for any entrepreneur or working professional to join us on a Wednesday to discuss how to have a healthy work-life balance, and then to just connect with other people to have a similar story and support each other with what we're dealing with in our working environment. And I would say that's pretty much it for now. Every Wednesday, well, not every Wednesday, but every second and fourth Wednesday of the month, we do the workplace mental health. We offer workshops monthly on different various mental health topics. And then with Dress for Success Memphis, we also offer workshops with the Successful Women in Business series. This month, also on June 30th, we're doing a home buyers workshop. In July, we kind of take a break. I am a firm believer in taking time off. So every July and December, me and my team, we take some time off, and I require that they limit their workload. I require that they take time off in July and December, enjoy their families, enjoy the holidays, enjoy the break. If they want to work, they can, but I require that they take time off to take care of themselves, because I'm definitely going to take some time off. So that's pretty much what we have going on. But we keep our website updated, social media is updated. So if you ever want to get involved or get connected, just visit our social media handles and our website to learn more.
Well, I miss you all and the work that you do with Dress for Success Memphis, just because, again, that's how we met. And then, of course, I moved. So I know that you're still very much connected and involved. And I've got to find a way to reconnect somehow here in my schedule so that I can keep that going for me, because it was good for me personally and professionally. So with that, I want to thank you, Dr. Gibson, for your time, your talent, your knowledge, your expertise, your candor, your transparency, and for you just being you and encouraging all of us to make sure that we are making time for ourselves, and that mental mindset shift is necessary for our personal and professional growth. So thank you so much for your time. I truly, truly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Joyce. Thanks for having me. This was great. I enjoy these conversations. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, but this has been good. Thank you. This is also therapy for me, so I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I know that our podcast listeners have gained a lot of knowledge from you. So I'm going to encourage all of you, as I said earlier, to please make sure that you connect with Dr. Gibson on the many platforms that she is available. And she does keep everything up to date. So as at any point in time you have a question about something, or you remember something that you wanted to address at some point, please make sure that you've connected with her and stay connected, because her information is always going to be accurate, up to date, incredible, and her and her team do an absolutely fabulous job at that. So I want to thank you all as the podcast listeners for tuning in this week, and each and every week that you do. It allows me the opportunity to do what I love by presenting this podcast to each and every one of you. I could not do what I do if it were not for you. So thank you for being here. And until next time, go forward and create the life that you desire and deserve. And remember that you can do that at any age. Let's continue to transition, transform, and thrive together.